What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Struggle to Strength podcast, your source for real life application on how to turn your struggles into strengths in all things mind, muscle, and money. Diamond None Illa Davis coming to us today. And this was an interesting episode. You know, I am always curious to learn how people in the music industry got into the music industry. And he had a really interesting story, don't you think?
Yeah, totally. And like how, you know, smashing the idea that like, if you want to be in the music industry because you love music, like you don't have to be Eminem or Beyonce. You know what I mean? You can make a perfectly wonderful life, like working towards your passion.
Yeah, the idea of success isn't like being number one. That's almost like destination happiness. Whereas today we talked a lot about you can be very successful and make a good living doing something that you would be doing anyway. And that, to me, that's real success.
Yeah.
Being able to spend your days doing something that you would do for free anyway. And so Diamond Davis, phenomenal human being. And I like the way that he connected dots throughout his life that led him to where he is now. And it expands far beyond the music industry. But for anybody who wants to follow a passion or turn a passion into some sort of career, this is a really valuable episode to give you the sort of the inspiration to just go for it, because there are a lot of people out here taking risks and chances on things that everyone else may tell them are not possible, or tell them to get a real job or be realistic. And to me, that's the most commonly traveled road to mediocrity. So this is a phenomenal episode, very interesting human being with a great story. I hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you inside. This is one of those things where growing up, you ask people what they want to be for when they grow up, right? Like this was something that you did when you were in kindergarten. Teachers, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everyone's like, I want to be a professional baseball player. I want to be a musician. I want to be a firefighter. Like, you know, some of these dreams that we had when we were younger, they seemed pretty far-fetched. And then, you know, as we grew older, for some reason, society wants us to be more reasonable and not chase those dreams and take the safe route. So I'm curious to learn about your story in not taking the safe route and in like pursuing your passion, pursuing your dreams, and, you know, the obstacles that you've come up on along the way.
For sure. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
What did you want to do? What did you want to do when you grew up, when you were little?
Yeah. What did you want to do?
Yeah.
You know what? The crazy thing is, I think it doubled back to what I wanted to do eventually. When I was younger, I always still hear flashbacks from family members randomly that kind of adds to my story more. But when I was younger, I actually used to sing and do like acting and like musicals and stuff when I was younger, but I never tied it into like any kind of musical wants. And then when I first started picking up on rap music, because I was raised by my grandparents. I mean, my parents were around, but I had that oldie feel. So I would have music around, but like, you know, I'm not 4, 5, 6 singing oldies. That's not what you do, you know, but I think I had picked up on, it might've been like Bone Thugs and Harmony. And my aunt had told me, she's like, your fascination with trying to rap like them was just, it was different. Like you were just obsessed with trying to mimic them. And I'm like, oh, really? You know, flashbacks of when I was younger, right? I ended up moving down to San Diego. I was up in the Bay Area at the time. I moved down to San Diego, and I was kind of lost. I had moved down. My grandmother was sick, and I had got like into poetry, and then I had gotten into like an after school event and was rapping in this after school event. Now, keep in mind, I never connected things because there's like a huge gap between these time frame between like 6 and like mid-teen, and my passion with like freestyling and getting into it just started to shift differently. During that time, I thought I wanted to be like a graphic designer. Like I was walking around, like I was on Photoshop, building computers, doing all that side of things, the creative side. And it was fun. I was goofing off and everything. But once I tapped back into music, I had friends and close family who actually also did music. And then from there, it just never went away. So I was like 14, 15. And then I just dove so deep into music that it just kind of became like, okay, I'm not shaking this. It went from doing like the engineering aspect and recording everyone around me to figuring out how things work. I've always been that person to like dissect stuff, but just recording wasn't enough. You know, I wanted to know more. I wanted to see how this thing worked. And I kept going. I kept pushing. I kept learning. I tried to figure out all the different things that connected dots. And then my story continues as that's going, which I'll elaborate again shortly. But yeah, once I kind of figured in that, it just continued to escalate. And I tried to figure out by dissecting things, I realized how many people don't notice that stuff connects.
Yeah,
like we're in a world.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, we're in a world that when you have a passion for something, if you step beyond the face value, that passion exists in many different areas. If you get what I'm saying. Like, so for music, people think, hey, you just have to be an artist. You have to be on the bright lights and main stage.
Or like top of the charts. Like,
exactly.
It's like, if you're not like number one on the Billboard, then like, what are you even, you know what I mean? And it's like, dude, that's like, there's thousands of other like ways that you could do it, like an infinite number of other ways.
And that's not success. Like, getting to number one isn't necessarily success. Like, it's different for everyone. Your version of success could be just making a decent living from music.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, right? So I still continue to grow, especially when sharing the message and running into people and trying to let them know, like, music itself is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's in every commercial. It's in the mall. It's in the elevators. You know what I mean? Music itself is everywhere. You cannot shake that. So if you are involved in the music industry, that means if you're smart and diligent enough in your research, you can create a living almost everywhere if you're not just aiming for that quote unquote number one spot. Right. Mm-hmm. So through that, I mean, I just continue to thrive and do what I can to push to stay close to the passion.
The interesting. Oh, sorry, Trav.
Just talking about like music being everywhere. I heard this interesting like explanation. I was reading a book about marketing and telling like how like marketing and sales, like it should all just be telling a story. And they were talking about the difference between noise and music and how if you play, like, music is a wild thing. Like, it is literally everywhere. And it was like, it's not just something that we were one day like, hey, this sounds kind of cool, let's keep doing this. It's like literally a thing that has been around as old as human beings are. And it's like created because it's like an accompanying pattern with the way like our brains work in general. And so
there's a Netflix episode of Explained that goes into music that if you haven't seen it, the way you're talking about it, you should for sure watch it.
Definitely.
I'm gonna need to watch it.
Because think about it. If I played a sound of, I mean, there are probably people who can do this, but like a normal person, if I played a sound of like a dump truck backing up, like, are you going to be able to like mimic that sound a week from now? Like, is it going to be stuck in your head? But like, if you play like a Beatles song for somebody or, you know, any sort of like catchy like song, they might be humming that like a month later. Like, it's literally, it's the way that our brains work. And the idea is like understanding music is to understand like everything kind of about life. And especially from like the marketing side, like the majority of people who are trying to market themselves, all they're doing is making noise and they don't understand how to make music.
I think the crazy thing is, because I have a background in marketing too, is that once again, me stripping down the bare essentials of just kind of learning stuff. If you really think about music itself didn't start as music, right? Music itself and the different elements kind of started as pure survival techniques used in different cultures. Like even like drums started in Africa as a way to like communicate to different villages and way to kind of let things know stuff were happening. So as you pull up these different elements and things that create music, you feel like it's an episode on my podcast I did drop not too long ago. I talked about like the survival instinct that many people lose as creators. Like, because when you're a kid, right, you do things in a creative space as your sense of survival. Hey, I'm going out to play. I'm going out to make this imaginary thing. Like, you're doing this in the sense of that's your existence. As you get older, you lose that. Now, if you're a creator, it's kind of like, oh, you're doing it for fun, or you're goofing off, or get a real job, whatever a perception of society is. But that is a lot of people's outlet that helps people kind of create and express themselves outside of like the traditional do the A, B, and C to get to D or whatever the case, you know. So when you realize that, and then you take away, Quincy Jones said his instructor told him that, like one of his instructors told him, you have 12 notes. There's only 12 notes in music. You just have to figure out the best way to bend them. Everyone has the same 12 notes. If you think about, it doesn't matter if it's rock, doesn't matter if it's blues, rap, country, everyone has the same 12 notes, and the amount of variety in music, that alone lets you know the possibilities, you know? So to me, I'm like, it's just an endless world in this area.
Just like everybody has the same 24 hours too.
Exactly.
Day.
Yeah.
Same type of like pattern.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah. That's twice as many hours in a day as you have notes in music, and look how much different kinds of music there are. Like you can do some pretty wild shit with your time if you prioritize it properly.
Very true.
Yeah.
What do you think? You said like, you just said a saying that I think is interesting, like get a real job. What do you think about that saying? Like, what does that even mean? You know what I mean?
The saying itself sounds like a bunch of old dudes that want to create some sort of like structured patriarchy. And
because I think that's like really toxic, and it's fucked up a lot of people's lives, honestly.
Same,
and
dude.
So
I think that's why people
like,
don't follow their dreams.
Yeah.
I think get a real job means play it safe. Play it safe to where you know results are safe. It doesn't mean be happy. It just means play it safe. My roots come from Louisiana, you know, like, so a lot of my grandparents and stuff are from Louisiana. And so when they moved to California, like my granddad, I think, worked on ships at one point. My grandmother worked like in the school system. When I said I was in marketing and music, you know, like that's not something that processes. No one understands marketing just as much as music is everywhere you look, every product, every communication. But to someone who's not in that field, they think marketing is probably just the commercials or it's just the advertisements at that moment, right? So to me, it's like a foreign language. When someone says just, you know, get a real job, I think a real job means, hey, if you know that if you do these steps, you will get an occupation that agrees to those steps. I think that's what get a real job means to some people, because it's like, think of most professions, let's say doctors, nurses, you know, what they do is amazing, but they do know the steps they have to go to school, go to a lot of school, do an externship, get your credentials, pass a certain test, and then you will end up in some kind of health facility, right? I mean, it's kind of, you might not get the top dollar, but you know, once they look at your resume, they see your credentials, they see your externship, you get into a facility. In a world of creative or a passion world, you have no guarantees. There is nothing guaranteed anywhere. It comes from a lot of your self relationships, your grit, your grind, being in the right place at the right time, and also carrying yourself the right way. You know what I mean? Like your credentials may not put you to the top spot in this world. Mm-hmm. It's how you handle the combination of everything that kind of gets you to the next level. So I definitely think get a real job. It's a play a safe mechanism that works where we are in this country. And if you're from out of this country too, I don't even think play it safe is a thing for a lot of people that come from other countries, because
that's true.
They have to make ends meet to bring it home. So
a choice.
They don't have a choice.
Is that why so many of successful business owners, I guess, are like immigrants? They're immigrants to the country. Like so many of these like people who like, it's like a classic story. Like some dude builds a, you know, metal fabrication factory. Like he immigrated here when he was a kid. Like so many of these like successful immigrants are successful like business owners are immigrants.
I think that has a lot to do with it. Ironically, I told someone, I was actually just I wasn't yelling at him, but I was kind of going off on an artist that I'm close to. And I was telling him, you have to think outside the box. And I told him, like, you know, you can do what other people have done in music. That's fine. But where you thrive is when you pull the elements that thrive in other areas, like thrive in tech, thrive in here, and then put that in music, because those things are already proven. But now you're bringing something that doesn't exist in this other world, and now you're creating something new, right? So when you look at like people coming from other countries, Americans are spoiled. I mean, we love America, but we don't. Poverty to us still is better than a lot of other countries. So when someone comes from another country and you tell them the head start they now have in America, it's like a whole level of playing field for them. Like, you mean like, oh, you mean me not being able to eat means that I just have to eat ramen for a week? Okay, like
still
me
have
not
water. I still have water coming out of my tap.
Dude, I met a lady in the gym. I was in the sauna, and she was so toned and so fit. Older Filipino lady. She probably was like mid 50s or so. It was her first day ever in the gym. And so I kind of was talking to her. Her English was a little broken, but she said, well, where I come from, I had to walk to the well 2 times a day, carrying 2 pails of water every day to make sure my family had water. She was toned because she had to literally stay fit in her natural life. Like, she wasn't in the gym, but she's carrying these pails, taking water back and forth to her kid and whatever else she had to do in pure survival. And it looked like she worked out 6 days a week, because I could tell in the sauna she was adjusting to the heat. So I was noticing that, and she's like, well, this is my first time ever in a gym. And now I think about other people who they have the lifestyle to pick 6-7 days a week because they've been here, and all it is, hey, I clock in, clock out, and I go get water from a fountain that I may consider has germs. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a different life. It doesn't knock someone. It doesn't, like, it's not their fault, but the perception of what our struggles are versus someone else coming from a third world country or something, when they touch down in the United States, our problems are so minimal to their perception that they take it and expand on it. Oh, you gave me a few $1,000s? Oh yeah, there's plenty of things I can do with a few $1,000s, so I definitely think that's why they are more successful a lot of times, because they're not approaching it from what they're being told is the only way. They're approaching it from ways they know kind of work, and what they had to, they have a small apartment, or they're sharing a room with someone and they happen to have their 2 kids, 3 kids in a room. Okay, well, we came out of a dirt hut. Like, it's perception of what they're approaching.
Yeah, they have less. They understand that they don't need as much as we feel as though we do. And they're also much more risk oriented, where a lot of our generations that have come before us are pretty risk averse in a lot of ways. They're the ones who told us to take the safe route. Meanwhile, immigrants are leaving everything they had behind to come just take a shot in America. Like, if you're already to that point where you're willing to risk everything you have, then why wouldn't you go into entrepreneurship? Why wouldn't you explore a passion? Why wouldn't you just figure out something that works? That's I think it's just embedded in their blood, the type of people that take those chances and make those risks. They're born to succeed, to thrive in some way.
I have a former coworker is a guy from the Philippines, actually Philippines as well, but he had been in the States, I think 3 years when I was working with him, and he's a photographer. And he was telling me what Americans pay on average for a photographer. They can get a top dollar photographer from the Philippines and fly them out. So, and his work is stunning. I see his work and I'm just like, wow. But he also says, well, when they shot out there, that's kind of like their competition, they're surviving. Their creative level of trying to be the best of the best in order to get selected is like different. And then, so even he went to like Cuba at one point when we weren't allowed to go to Cuba. And I'm like, dude, how'd you, he's like, I drove into, because we're in San Diego, right? He's like, I went into Mexico. I didn't even speak English. He's like, I just got the translator app and tried to communicate with people. So we both spoke into it and it translated. I flew from Mexico to Cuba. That's how I went to Cuba, because we weren't allowed to go yet. And I just laughed because I'm like, the thought process behind that, even to figure it out, versus saying, oh, I can't go there, was such a whole different level. The figuring out the language barrier, like, okay, I can't speak it. Well, if I have this app, you speak into it, it translates it. So I can go up to people and we can just communicate. Just the thought process of hearing it was telling a storytelling enough for me, because other people would just be like, oh, it's not an option. So when it's something, I guess I'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people have trouble figuring out what they want to do or what they think is possible to be done, because we've been told to take the safe route. We've been told to just go to school, get the job. And half of us who go to school aren't ready to go to school. We don't know what we want to do. We just go in, we select a random major that we think sounds good, that we think would be helpful. But now at my age, like looking back on my college years, I would have done something different than go to school for business. I probably would have gone to school for kinesiology or some sort of like sports physical therapy, something like that. I think somewhere along the line, we are battling the idea that we want to play it safe because that's what we're told we should do. But we also are really interested in these things that we're passionate about. And earlier on in this conversation, you were talking about how your passion for creativity did not just stay in music. You were noticing that you were being pulled in different directions towards engineering and sound and all these other aspects of music, which to the untrained person may seem like you're being pulled in a bunch of different directions. But I find that most people who go through life, we find passion, we find things that we enjoy that kind of steer us, and we take little pieces of everything that we do. So for you, it was like a little bit of music, a little bit of engineering, a little bit of computer work. Like that doesn't mean that, although at first it may seem that maybe you weren't meant for music because now you're interested in engineering, or maybe you're not interested in engineering because now you're doing something else that seemingly isn't related, but you've noticed they are connected. And as you continue to go through life with that sort of curiosity of being passionate about things and taking little bits and pieces of everything that you experience, you create this unique life and this unique sound. And so it sounds like that's kind of what you were telling your friend to do. I think most people have trouble sort of seeing the world that way. Do you have any words to the people who are like unsure of what they want to do, unsure of if they want to follow their passion or if they even know what their passion is yet? Like, how do you find that?
For me, it became as simple as, what can't I stop thinking about? And also there's certain things that you don't even know you're passionate about, but you can't stop being involved with learning it. Like, what kind of show are you always watching? What kind of book do you always pick up? What kind of ads always stick out to you? What kind of YouTubes are you extremely glued to? In those, there's elements of things that you're passionate about, and you don't know why. You're like, your brain like craves it towards it. Yeah, it craves it. It's that feeling, but you just don't know. So even hearing you speak about, jumping into me doing show production and things like that, people don't realize, like, so when it comes to event production, I may handle the corporate side of things, but the majority of people who work in that, especially when it comes to sound, are very extremely tapped into the music industry. These are guys that are on tours with the biggest acts and who are just getting off of, networking with so-and-so. So like the network expands so much, and we're in a space to where there's no pressure, but the conversations are real. Like, so, hey, I might be doing this and that. And then I'm talking to someone who just, who was over the lead of the Taylor Swift concert or tour. And then I just talked with someone who put up the video wall for where the president was here and there. And like, what other people don't realize is doing my research, and like I said, my due diligence and everything, I understand the loophole of connections. I understand the 6 degrees of separation, right? You're no more than 6 degrees from anybody in this world. If you don't know, you might know someone who knows Oprah's cousin, who's, obviously who knows Oprah. And I'm a people person, so I like to, dig and find stories. But what you notice is that sometimes those dots align. And if you're in a group of people to which you can communicate with, so in that field, hey, we're talking our passion. Their passion is music too, right? So we might be just talking about a certain song that just hit in the background. And they may say, man, did you hear how he did that riff? Or this crazy story was I was on tour with Elvis Presley's niece, or like the stories are like that. So you dig more, and then you see these people enough. So I'm never far away from where my passion is. And in fact, when I am in different cities, you mess around and you go somewhere and someone's like, dude, I was just thinking about swinging over and hanging out with a friend. And then that friend is somebody, like, you just never know. So when it's time to step away and say, you know what, I happen to be in the city and I'm going to hit the studio. Guess what? You happen to have a connection with the engineer. You happen to know a couple singers in town. Like, it literally is that. But that is in every aspect of life. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't just go for the talent, right? You don't just go after the person who's a successful person. There's a whole team behind them of people who are reachable, will connect with you, will share their stories. And they're people too. Like, you're genuine. Like, that doesn't mean just go dig for gold. Like, I think a lot of people think that means chase after them and get their connections. No, they like the same things you do. You talk to them, and then, like, whatever they're connected to later might come out, but just build that relationship, because it's never too far from your passion, right? If you're in video and you love the video world, hey, that person might be connected to a top producer. Like, there's same way if you write books, top authors. Like, there's, in the world we live in, it's huge, but it's a lot smaller than we give credit for as far as knowing people. Because if passions definitely align without you knowing it.
Mm-hmm. I feel like the theme of this entire conversation has been like, yes, you can, like, take the risks and like just go for it. Because there's so many people who go their entire lives not going for it or wondering what could have happened or what could have been. And like, dude, all it is just showing up for yourself and doing what you enjoy doing and following what you're interested in. You shouldn't have to work your entire life away at a job you don't enjoy. Nope. If you can find a way to make money doing something that you would be doing anyway, which it sounds like all of three of us have, that to me, like, that's success. Even though you're not at the top of the charts, you're not Billboard Top 100, you're still making a living doing something that you would be doing for free anyway.
And quite honestly, if you're putting in 14-hour days, and if you're putting in 14 hours a day when you're like electrified by the idea of doing it, it does not feel like work. Like, you're just loving it, like, so when I do a lot of this stuff, I'm just a creative. Like, if it's something that thrives me and an idea sparks, I want to do it. Like, when I was heavy in starting my fitness journey, I didn't like some of the clothes that were out. So the idea sparking of me creating a fitness line was something I sparked and kind of came up with some concepts and did some concepts. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh, I love that because it's something I would wear, something I want to do. It's something like, and then you're like, well, maybe a couple people down the line will be something that they like too, And I think when it's something you love to do, the natural things that come in your thoughts, most people ignore because they figure, hey, this isn't the norm, or someone's going to have something to say about it. But those trinklets of like fire that go, those are your passion points. Those are the things to where you need to push on and get a few people around you who will be true critics, but not just bash you because of your idea. They might tell you, hey, it could use a little work, but I love where you're going, versus, oh, that's stupid, you're never going to make it. That's two different kind of critiques. So I think you need those people in your life, or find other people who are just as vulnerable with their passion as you are. And next thing you know, you have some kind of spark from it.
I love that. That's what life should be all about when it comes down to it, is doing things you enjoy. And human beings have this really interesting and innate ability to tell ourselves why we shouldn't do things and why they shouldn't work and why they won't be successful. And we're really bad at telling ourselves why things would be successful, why things would work, why you should do something. We're not very good at talking ourselves into things.
I think people think failure is a bad thing.
Dude, they do.
So
they do 100%.
When you fall, it's like this. When you first get on a bike and someone tells you, dude, you're going to fall. And you're like, that thought process is there, right? But when you fall, people are, oh, I told you were going to fall. But the moment you ride that bike and you're doing tricks, then people ask how you're doing it. Oh, that's so cool. But you would have never gotten to that point if you never fail.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's a good analogy too. Cause I'm thinking like everybody remembers when they first started riding a bike. And when you fell, when you were learning how to ride a bike with two wheels, like no one was like, that's it's your parents were cheering for you because you made it so far before you fell.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're celebrating the part before when you failed.
Yep.
And then next time you do it, you're going to get more of that part before you fall again. Like I used to say, I come from competitive snowboarding. And I used to say, if you're not falling, you're not trying hard enough. Like you're going to fall.
Yep.
It's inevitable. But every time you get a little bit further before you fall, you're getting better. And people are afraid of that falling. They're afraid of that failure rather than everything that happens between those failures.
Yep. And in today's day and age to where everything is put on social media and made fun of and broadcasted at your attempts, so many people shy away from like, all right, it becomes like, maybe I just shouldn't ride that bike because I'm going to fall and then people are going to laugh at me. So maybe the bike just isn't something I'm going to enjoy, and they go and do something else. But it's like, you have to get on that bike because, connecting it to the conversation we're having, getting on that bike is the equivalent. If it's your passion, it's the equivalent of walking down the street. You see a bike store and you stop and you stare for a minute and you're like, maybe one day I'll probably do that. And then you keep walking and you see other people riding bike and you're like, that is so cool. And then you get home and like you turn on TV and there's like a bike commercial and there's like a bike show and you're like, I don't know why, but I can't stop watching this. Like that is the passion speaking out, right? But in your head, you're just like, that's not me. I can't do that, but I want to know everything about it. And then you get on the bike and people say, dude, you're going to fall. And you're like, maybe you're right. I'm not going to do it. But the people who get on that bike, yeah, they fall. But then those are the people that kind of saying, all right, what did I do different? Like, what can I do different than I fall this time? Okay, I failed if I did it this way. So maybe next time I'll fall differently and I'll figure out now how to do that. And then they become that professional bike rider and that's all they do and get paid off it. And everyone who was criticizing them for falling is like, dude, I'm so like envious of you. Like, I wish I could be in that spot. And that's what we look at. That's society right now.
Yep. 1,000%. Man, this has been a very helpful and inspiring conversation for me. I really appreciate us diving in and your perspective on all this.
Thanks. Appreciate for having me, man. It was a pleasure, man. I'm loving the energy.
Hell yeah, man. I think the common theme here is just to go for it, to follow your dreams, follow your passion. Don't let what other people potentially may think get in your head and keep you from doing what you love. And yeah, I love your story, man. I love how you're connecting dots in life. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing it with us, man. So I know I'm definitely going to want to keep in touch. I know our listeners probably are too. Where can we find you? Give yourself the plug.
You can go to my website, which is noneilla.com, NONEILLA.com. But if not, I'm on all social media at none_illa on your Instagram, on your Twitter. You look on YouTube, none, NONE_ILLA.
Awesome. So y'all, we'll put those links in the show notes for you so you guys can follow and support my boy over here who's crushing it.
Man, I look forward to it. Look, this isn't going to be the last conversation, and let me know how that trip to Houston goes, man. We'll be just missing each other.
Absolutely. I absolutely will. Yeah, we'll be back on Sunday. And so I hope your show goes well. And we'll keep in very close touch. But thank you again for coming on. Thank you to everybody who's listened to another episode of the Struggle to Strength podcast. We will see y'all next week.